the last sort of major cluster of topics I wanted to talk about were more practical. And generally, how would this be achieved? Because it seems like, if anything, the United States and other Western countries are becoming increasingly socialist and government is growing larger. Is the only possible full-scale violent revolution,
No.
or how do you see this happening?
Violent revolution is probably a mistake from a libertarian standpoint, because a large part of the reason people want a government is to protect themselves against violence. So if there's lots of violence going around, they're likely to be willing to tolerate more government, not less. No, I think that what you want to do is to gradually reduce the size of government. And there are a whole bunch of different ways in which you get people to do that. One of them is what we're doing at the moment, that is trying to spread ideas using the internet or writing books or teaching classes or whatever, so that you can try to persuade, try to change. I like to say that the democratic political system is like an old-fashioned microscope with two knobs, a fine control and a coarse control. And the fine control is lobbying, basically. The coarse control is democratic voting by ignorant voters, because there's no incentive for the voter to actually have the information he needs to do a good job voting, since he's not the one who bears most of the cost if he makes the mistake. And therefore, one way of changing things is to change what ignorant people know. So putting out ideas. I actually had a Substack post about this maybe a month or two ago, called, I think, How to Save the World, pretentious title, but discussing ways, and it can be done for good or bad reasons. I gave an example of a particular case of somebody putting out ideas into the public where it happened to be a lie, but it was a well-tailored lie and lots of people believed it. I try to have ways in which I can embody an argument or an idea in a way that is simple and memorable. And I have a standard example of that, which is growing Hondas. The fact that you can we have two different technologies for producing automobiles. You can build them in Detroit, or you can grow them in Iowa. And the way you grow cars in Iowa is to grow the raw material they're made out of, which is called wheat, put it on a ship, send the ship into the Pacific, and it comes back with Hondas on it. That's a technology for producing cars just as much as the other one is. And what that tells you is that what an auto tariff is doing is not protecting American auto workers from the competition of Japanese auto workers. It's protecting American auto workers from the competition of American farmers. So that's an example of an easy argument to follow, which, if enough people understand it, will make it politically a little more expensive to pass tariffs. And trying to do that kind of thing is one approach. A different approach is trying to create institutions that replace government. So, for example, if somebody could come up with a really inexpensive technology for private schooling, which ought to be possible now that we've got the internet and computers, at the point when you can get as good an education of your kids for $200 a year as the public school can for $12,000, there's going to be a big shift. Well, there will be a shift towards homeschooling and similar arrangements. Not perfect, because the public schools are largely doing babysitting anyway, and you need a substitute for that as well. But my point is just that the more you can produce adequate private substitutes, the less the pressure for people to want the government. And you can, in various ways, try to spread ideas. You might succeed, you might fail. I mean, the socialists managed to do it pretty successfully a century plus ago, and maybe we can do it too. But no, I think a revolution is not a very likely method. You do know, by the way, that at the moment, the leading presidential candidate in Argentina is not only a libertarian, but describes himself as an anarcho-capitalist. It's quite fascinating. We'll see what happens. He's an economist, too.
Well, talking about the spread of ideas, just to close, is your motivation in thinking, talking, and writing about this for the past many decades based on your interest in the theory and an obsession with that? Or are you really just more deeply invested in seeing change in politics and economics, like with this Argentine
I'm in favor
candidate?
of change, but I think my main incentive is that it's fun. That thinking through ideas is something I enjoy doing. And there's a certain sense in which I feel that sort of the way I pay for the amount of space I take up in the universe is by creating new and good ideas. So, no, I hope it'll improve things, but I wouldn't have said that that's my main motive. And I've never been a professional libertarian. I'm a professional economist. So from that standpoint, a good deal of my work, my specialty for, I guess the last 30 years or so of my career was economic analysis of law. And that has some relevance to libertarianism and to anarcho-capitalism, but mostly it's a matter of trying to solve a puzzle, of trying to say, if you wanted to make a economically efficient legal rule, what would it be? And there's a whole literature on that. And I've got one book, which is my book, Law's Order, is essentially my contribution to that literature. And I do other things for fun.